The Brewhouse was created to capture and share with you the long history of the Genesee Brewery. But the brewery itself isn't half as interesting as the beer and the people who make it. Visit GeneseeBrewhouse.com.
Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us. This is the Rochester Press Box presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. We're at the Brewhouse today and happy to have Greg Keagle back to talk a little baseball.
Glad to be back.
Best season for it. Mike Catalana.
Yep.
Pat Duffy. What do you got on?
Oh, baseball playoffs starting. The Tribe early 2000s authentic batting jersey. I don't know why I love the uppercase cursive I. It's like one of my favorite logos of all time.
So, are you going to miss the logo, the Chief Wahoo?
Chief Wahoo. You know, no, I sold all of my Chief Wahoo jerseys because it kind of made me feel a certain way when I saw a couple of pictures. I'm not trying to make a stand here or anything, but I don't think I'm going to miss it. I don't think so.
All right. And not to give anything away, but you just told us that's your pick for the World Series.
It is. I think.
Lay it out. What do you think?
Well, I like the way that they're built. You know, they talk about teams being built for October baseball, and I'm of course going to be a staunch advocate for pitching. Pitching's always going to win, and I think, Bauer's healthy, Carrasco's healthy. I like the fact that the team got so close last year. They've been close a couple of years. You're still hungry. It's one thing to win and repeat. It's another thing to chase somebody down, and I think that the underdog always has a slight edge in baseball.
Last time Greg was here, we were doing a lot of talk about the way the pitchers are being utilized, and we're seeing more and more of that. We're going to see more and more of that as the playoffs progress, I think.
Yeah, I think so, and it's about matchups, and as we all know, everything goes into analytics and all the different changes and everything. But I think what ends up going to decide things is going to have great pitching. Somebody's got to hit in the clutch, and we've seen teams that it usually, and a lot of times these cases, comes from a guy that nobody expects. I think when you look at a full 25-man roster in these playoffs, it's going to be somebody for one of these teams, even the great teams, even Boston or Houston or Cleveland, whoever it is, that comes up with that hit when nobody's expecting it, and that's what's going to pull somebody away.
Yeah, that kid who Walters hit 170 during the regular season, and he comes up a hero for Colorado. Who do you like?
I don't know. I want to pick the Tribe. I like Cleveland, but I feel like sometimes we get so into baseball playoffs that we overthink it. And when you stand back and look at it, Boston is just so good, right?
They are very good, but I think all around, I think you can make a case for Houston being as good or a better team than Boston. And Boston's one of the best teams we've seen in a long time.
Okay, so but you go with, I guess I'm just...
The American League's loaded, I think.
But that's just it, right? I'm old school. I grew up a Blue Jays fan. I love the Toronto Blue Jays, having to see the Yankees and the Red Sox every year. And there's that steel sharpens steel mentality where when you're coming out of that division, and I know where everyone else is playing with stuff too, I just don't see how Boston loses in this American League.
I think it goes back to the pressure side of it. I know that this is Major League Baseball. I know that these guys are used to it. I know that they can play under the lights. But now you add the burden of being the best team in baseball, and we have to finish the World Series, win the World Series for it to all matter. You look, not to segue into football, but you look at when the Patriots were undefeated. Nobody remembers they were undefeated. They remember the Giants are Super Bowl champs. So I think that when you start to add extra pressure on top of the game's difficult to begin with, it's a very mental game, and so confidence is key. And when you're that good and you're playing against teams that are that good, and you're the underdog and nobody's really giving you credit, that becomes almost billboard material.
But you bring up the pressure. Is there added pressure anymore? I know when you were playing, I don't mean to be we're back in your day, but if a team from the Midwest caught fire, you didn't really hear about them until the playoffs started, so you didn't know them. Now, you have entire networks and stations. Everybody who follows baseball knows the guys on all of these teams. How much more pressure is there for the Red Sox?
Feel it watching them, though.
Because the game, for example, the Colorado Cubs game, in a regular season game, you're clicking off at a certain point, nobody's hitting. But the pressure and that every pitch matters is why baseball playoffs are, everybody talks about it ramping up in the NHL, which it does, and in the NBA, which it does, but it's the same game. I don't think baseball is the same game in the playoffs. I think because you got 162 games and you got every pitch that matters.
And it's always
in the playoffs.
One-on-one to the extent that no other sport is, with the exception of wrestling. This is the Rochester Press Box. We are presented by the Genesee Brewhouse, and at the Genesee Brewhouse, we talk Buffalo Bills next.
The Press Box is brought to you in part by Bay & Goodman Pizza, a local Rochester favorite. Corner of North Winton and Browncroft, Bay & Goodman Pizza.
Welcome back. This is the Rochester Press Box from the Genesee Brewhouse. Talk Buffalo Bills. Look, I think if you look at the schedule, with the Bills going to Minnesota and Green Bay in back-to-back weeks, you come out of that with a split, we'd have taken it if that's putting a positive spin on things.
Yeah, no doubt. I think 1-3 actually is maybe better than most people would have thought in this, but it's not the one win. The 3 losses, they have not been competitive. Slightly in the second half of that Chargers game, and I guess the defense kept them from getting blown out last week because the offense was so bad. If you're going to be building, you don't want games where they are so bad when they are bad, and that's what we've seen so far. That's what they got to get back to. They showed flashes in that Vikings game. I mean, they dominated that game, but the other games, that's been a problem.
But the Vikings game is what scares me, right? So if you had 4 games where the Bills lost and they lost big, you can make the argument the talent isn't there, they're getting used to the young players that they have, whatever. But the way that the Bills looked against the Vikings is what's keeping me up at night right now, because they found a way to use the talent that they had. They dominated the Vikings throughout the entire game.
Yeah.
Yet they were blown out in the 3 other games. Like, they weren't as close as they looked on the score. And I mean, the Ravens won, for goodness sake. The fact that there is a way to win with this team, and they figured it out week 3, but are getting blown out every other week they're playing, scares me about what this coaching staff is doing. And there was a stat that I saw a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you saw this. Of McDermott's 10 losses as a Bills coach, they've lost by 20 points or more 6 times. That's almost impossible to do in the NFL, lose by 20 or more.
And still make the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think it's got to be more adjustments that they make.
Yeah, and you had mentioned earlier about how many touches that, a guy like McCoy has, and he may be aging, but, that brings up a great point. You've got a player like that, a playmaker like that, and he's not getting the ball. That's not scheme, right? That's not something that you're not seeing, or that Josh isn't seeing at the line of scrimmage. That's not the right play getting called in from the sideline. So, I don't know if that's the answer. I'm a baseball guy, but my take on football is just that, I'd like to see the Bills, we talked about it as well, young teams are not, this is pro sports. We want to see effort 100% of the time, and I'm not sure I'm seeing it on the outside of the numbers. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, it takes adjustments too. Look, the Packers saw everything that the Vikings did not do against the Bills, and they came in prepared. What worried me is that I didn't think the Bills coaching staff adjusted, and they left Josh Allen hanging out there, and he is not good enough on his own to make up, and he ended up making a couple of really dumb plays. They took away the short passes, they took away the whatever they had in the running game, and they didn't adjust. Now we'll see if they do change this week.
They didn't take anything away in the running game. There was no running game. LeSean McCoy, like you brought up earlier, ran the ball 6 times on Sunday for the season. You can't even make an argument for the injury, because for the season, in 2.5 games, LeSean McCoy, your offensive juggernaut, your bell cow, has run the ball 21 times, which is what he should be running per game with a rookie quarterback standing in the backfield.
We're playing this week. The Bills are getting 3.5 points from the Titans. It's in Buffalo. Pick the game. It's for 4-4, which leads the league.
Yeah, no big deal, Mike. I don't know if you heard that. 5 points, I think, about the Bills at home, but 3.5. I don't think there's a way the Bills cover that. The Titans have looked pretty good the last couple of weeks.
Pick another.
I like the Jets. Or no, I don't like the Jets. The Jets are 1-point dogs at home against the Broncos. There's no way they cover that against Denver coming to New York.
All right, I got the Chargers at home, giving 5.5 to the Oakland Raiders. I like Tennessee to cover.
I've picked the Bills to lose every game so far, outright to lose, but I'm going to pick them to win this week. And it's in part because they were embarrassed last week, and you talked about that and how they played. I think they'll make adjustments. And the Titans have been really good. They had a 5-quarter game with the Eagles last week. They had a game with the Jags the week before that. They've been good. They've won 3 in a row. They come to Buffalo. I think they're a little bit flat in this game, and I think the Bills pull out the win.
Hey, real quick, Bill, I'm sorry, not to cut you off.
I'm 0-8.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page.
I'm trying to give you.
I'm 4-4.
It's like if we were racing, I would have to let you go way ahead of me and then run past you, even at my advanced age.
You get a new hip this
to
week?
go
What
so
did I
much
miss?
quicker than you. I'm going to take the Redskins and the points in New Orleans. I think the Saints are good, but I think that's a close game.
Going for 0-10. Who do you got, Greg?
I think the Bills are that coin toss team. They show up one week, they don't the next. I think that this is their week to show up. I think they cover. I actually agree with Mike. I think they win this week. And as a Bills fan, this is very painful for me to say, but my other team that I think covers the spread is the Dolphins. I don't know if they can win. I don't think they beat the Bengals, but 6.5, I think that they were embarrassed up in when they played their big brother in Foxborough, and I think that they show up and cover the spread.
Nice suit, by the way, too. I didn't want
Herb
that to go unsaid. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brew House. Like it or not is next. Here's the Press Box trivia question, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Here's the Press Box trivia answer, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us from the Genesee Brew House. This is the Rochester Press Box. Like it or not, the fact that the Buffalo Bills drafted the pick that the Kansas City Chiefs took Pat Mahomes with.
So yeah, you get Tre'Davious White out of it. Now, if you go up Tre'Davious White lined up against Patrick Mahomes, I mean, they're both really good players. Mahomes right now has more of an impact on his team. I'll say this, Mahomes is a blast to watch if you are not a Buffalo Bills fan, right? Because, I know that we're 4 games into the season and that his career is young and anything could change. There's a list of guys who came out gangbusters and ended up tailing off and not being career. But if this guy does well and Josh Allen does not, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years down the road.
Haunt the franchise.
Well, haunt the franchise. It's one of the biggest disasters drafting in NFL history. It's up there, Herschel Walker, Cowboys mistakes. The Bills, who haven't had a quarterback since Jim Kelly, passes on one of the best quarterbacks they've seen in this generation.
Well, it was, again, Andy Reid saw something in it that the Bills brass didn't.
So there's no excuse when you look at him, if you scouted him properly. This is what happens when your organization isn't on the same page. They still had Doug Whaley technically as the GM. McDermott comes in, a defensive head coach. You think the first thing he's going to do is draft a quarterback? The answer is no. He doesn't know what he's looking for in a quarterback. And that is what has worried me the whole time.
He spent his whole tenure, though, negotiating to be in position to do what he did last
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm saying is he would have been making that first pick of a quarterback before they had even hired a general manager, even though I think everybody knew who they were going to go after. They made a massive error in judgment if you look at the way Mahomes is trending at the moment. Now, we don't know. The Bears traded up to get Trubisky with the second pick in the draft. They moved all the way up. But the Bills' problem was they were at that spot and they traded out of it. They didn't just pass on him. They literally traded the pick to somebody else who took him and then did well.
The only defense that I will give of McDermott here, Texas Tech quarterback, I mean, you could make the argument that the numbers and the way he played was because of the offense he was in. I'll stop talking.
One other quick thing. Mahomes needs 200 yards passing this week to surpass what Alex Smith did with the exact same team a year ago through 5 games. The only thing I will say is Andy Reid is brilliant with quarterbacks, and they have great weapons behind them. The difference was teams adjusted to Reid, and they adjusted to Smith. Will they adjust to Mahomes?
Greg, like it or not, this is more believe it or not, actually, that the Minnesota Twins fired Paul Molitor.
As disappointing as that is, he's a great guy. He's good for baseball. Did he inspire young players? And I think at the end of the day, they say that they want a different voice for young players, and that was one of the primary reasons they did it.
That's an age issue, isn't it? Look at these young managers that are having success.
I don't know if it's an age issue, because I know some older guys that were fiery and fun, and they could inspire anybody regardless of age, right?
They're gone.
But they are because I think you just at every sport trends and you get younger players and younger coaches, but analytics are one thing if you're a general manager. If you're going to talk analytics, but as far as being a manager in baseball, it's still feel, it's still pressure, it's still making the play, it's still having confidence in a player to make the play. If you overmanage baseball, I personally think you lose. I was glad to see the Rays lose with Madden. I just personally think that you have to have a little bit of passion in sports still. I'm always going to be a believer in that. And I think if you make it all about analytics, you lose. And I think that's what Molitor did. He's exactly right. I played with Terry, and he was one of the most fun players. He was a player's coach. He was it wasn't X's and O's for him. It was, it was do your
He's
job.
younger than he is, though. He's almost fits into the other category.
Well, but you're an old guy saying that.
Yeah, just saying. You just said they were all gone, so it depends. I said some people are ageless, right? Terry's an ageless person.
You exaggerate for the point of making your point. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brew House. We're at the Brew House, and Unfinished Business is next.
And now here's this week's MVP Experience Stat of the Week, brought to you by Sport Clips, where it's good to be a guy. No appointment ever needed.
And now to Eichel. He floated one.
Bacon, egg, cheese. Only one way to make this better. Another one. Dunkin' Go-Tos. Get 2 bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches for $5. America runs on Dunkin'.
Welcome back, and thanks again for joining us. This is the Rochester Press Box from the Genesee Brew House. Unfinished Business brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts. America runs on Dunkin'. Pat.
Hockey is back, baby. Sabres opened up Thursday night. Now, as we tape this, we don't know what happened, but I have a favor of you folks in Buffalo who work for the Sabres. Please be good. Please, I need this. There are 2 teams I follow very closely, the Buffalo Bills, and we talked about that earlier, and the Buffalo Sabres. And it has been a long time since I could sit back, put my feet up, and know that a team that I'm cheering for is going to be good. And there's always hope, right? Every single year, as bad as the Sabres have been, there's been hope. This year, Rasmus Dahlin and Sheary, right? And Jeff Skinner, these guys that could transform the franchise, but there's also question marks about every single one of them. There's no slam dunk. I'm begging you this. Be in a playoff race. I don't even need you to make it. Just make it exciting down the 3-week stretch and do something at the trade deadline where I'm like, and not like, we got to get a first-round pick for this guy. I need it for the sake of my own sports sanity because I don't know how much longer I can hold on rooting for teams that every year have no shot.
And we'll all suffer if you lose it.
Thank you.
And they made Eichel the captain. It is absolutely his team, which gives him more power. It also puts more responsibility on him. This is when he needs to go from being a really good player to a great player.
Mr. Major Leaguer.
I'm actually going to go to my second hobby, which is the golf course. And are we going to ever have a Ryder Cup where we can be inspired by play and not inspired by maybe true stories about a fight that happens after or before on the plane? I'd like to see good golf come back. As much as everybody maybe dogged Tiger Woods, I miss Tiger Woods and I missed what he did for golf. I think that if we could get some of that energy back in and start to scream USA, USA, I think it would be good for all of us, because right now I think the country needs a shot in the arm.
I don't argue with that, but at the same time, isn't it somehow good for the sport? We saw tennis was in its heyday when it was McEnroe and Connors and bad people.
Well, you know what it was? It was maybe bad people, but it was great competition and guys that went and gave everything they had and kind of that American spirit, right? Chips are down. It's the last day. I got to make this putt and I'm going to roll something down. And I just don't know if we have the players that are doing that or if it matters enough. Maybe they win enough throughout the year and the Ryder Cup doesn't mean enough, but I'd like the Ryder Cup to have some Olympics to it and maybe get some pride back.
I find myself disappointed that it's 2 years away. I'm ready for another one next year.
Yeah, we'll see how the U.S. does then. Do you know who's a busy guy right now? It's the guy who's the tailor in Canton, Ohio, who puts the gold jacket together. And the reason I bring that up is we present the gold jacket on a weekly basis now to all the rookie quarterbacks, the Hall of Fame jacket. And you know what I mean, because Sam Darnold won it week number 1 because he was on his way to the Hall of Fame with the Jets, and then he's tailed off. And then Baker Mayfield took it, and he had it. Maybe Josh Allen got one hand on it, but he didn't get the Hall of Fame jacket. And then Baker last week with 4 turnovers, and they end up losing in overtime. And now we've been very happy to give it to Josh Rosen because he completed a game even though they lost and didn't throw an interception. Can we settle down a little bit? I know it's frustrating, Bills fans, and Josh Allen is coming off an awful game. But it is, watch him move, a process for all of these quarterbacks.
Mike!
For all of these quarterbacks. Just settle down. Have opinions every week. Rip them when they're bad. Cheer them when they're good. But let's try to make long-term judgments on guys playing in their first games.
Long-term is the best part of the whole thing. If you get to watch this battle, these 4 guys for years.
Yeah, we will. And we will know a lot as the weeks go on. but it's going to be years going on before we know the truth.
How have you been in this town for so long and you still believe there's a process happening? How do you believe this?
I said it's process for all the
You
quarterbacks.
shut!
There's a process to this show. It's time to end it.
Sorry.
It's like
This
lighting
is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Unfinished Business was presented by Dunkin' Donuts. Greg, great to have you again.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Part
Guys,
of the plan.
thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week with the Rochester Press Box.